Psalms 83. O Yahweh, do not rest silently. Do not keep silent or be still, O El. For look, your enemies roar, and those that hate you have lifted up their head. They devise cunning schemes against your people and consult together against your protected ones. They say, come, let us annihilate them from being a nation, so that the name of Israel will be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with a unified purpose. They have made a covenant against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined with them. They have provided help to the children of Lot. Selah. Do to them as you did with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the Wadi of Kishon. They were destroyed at Endor. They became dung for the ground. Make their leaders like Oreb and Zeb, and all their chiefs like Zeba and Zalmunna, who said, let us take as our possession the pastures of Yahweh. O Yahweh, make them like the tumbleweed, like the chaff before the wind. As fire burns a forest, and as a flame sets afire mountains, so pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Yahweh. Let them be ashamed and terrified forever, and let them be humiliated and perish, that they may know that you, whose name is Yahweh, you alone are the Most High over the whole earth. Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom, and welcome back. It's been a few months since the last video. A lot is going on in the world around us. Many of you came to the realization that we are still slaves in this land. There's even more still in denial about our current situation. While we fight and kill each other over petty differences, our enemies are all plotting together to destroy the nation of Israel. It wasn't in my intentions to take so long to present new content to you, but Yahweh has been revealing a lot to me about our current situation. To be honest, some of the things I've been shown have been very overwhelming and difficult for me to understand. It has taken me some time to process the information and how it relates to our plight. I'm still learning, so please bear with me as I attempt to lay out some of the things that Yahweh has recently revealed to me. In our last video, we talked about Satan and how the word simply means an adversary. Adversaries are enemies who act in opposition or contrary to us. It was shown via scripture how Yahweh raises up adversaries against us. In the book of Remembrance, he used human beings or angels to act as adversaries or opponents. Yahweh warned our forefather David that he would use the rod of men to chastise us when we do wrong. 2 Samuel 7:12-15. When your days are full and you lie down with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring after you, who will go out from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he will be a son for me, whom I will punish when he does wrong, with a rod of men and with the blows of human beings. But my loyal love will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Most of my subscribers understand that our forefathers did wrong in breaking the covenant. Therefore, we find ourselves in another man's land, being servants or slaves, and oppressed by our captors or adversaries. Lately, there has been a lot of talk in the media and among the political parties about reparations. What exactly are reparations? According to Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition, reparations are 1. The act of making amends for a wrong. 2. Compensation for an injury or wrong, especially for wartime damages or breach of an international obligation. The African American, Negro, colored, black, and niggers want to be compensated for slavery. But how can we expect our adversaries to make an amends for horrors of slavery when we are still slaves? Being transitioned from one form of slavery to another form of slavery does not constitute freedom. We read that reparations are given to compensate for a wrong or an injury. Will a nation right a wrong when the wrong is still being perpetrated on us? Had we truly been set free, we would have been sent home. When a prisoner completes his sentence, does he stay in the prison? No, he is sent home. According to Scripture, when we complete our sentence, we will also be sent home with reparations. On the mouth of 2 witnesses shall the matter be established. Isaiah 60, 8-12. Who are these? They fly like a cloud and like doves to their coops, because the coastlands wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish are first to bring your children from afar, their silver and gold with them, for the name of Yahweh your Elohim, and for the Holy One of Israel, because he has glorified you. And foreigners shall build your walls, and their kings shall serve you. For in my anger I struck you, but in my favor I have taken pity on you. And your gates shall continually be open, day and night. They shall not be shut, to bring you the wealth of nations, and their king shall be led. For the nation and the kingdom that will not serve you shall perish, and the nation shall be utterly devastated. Hallelujah. Jeremiah 30, 16-18. Therefore, all those who devoured you will be devoured, and all your foes, all of them, will go into captivity. And those who plundered you will be as plunder. And all those who plundered you, I will make as plunder. For I will present healing to you, and I will heal you of your wounds, declares Yahweh. Because they have called you an outcast, saying, It is Zion, there is no one who cares for her. Thus saith Yahweh, Look, I will restore the fortunes of the tents of Jacob, and I will have compassion on his dwellings. And the city will be rebuilt upon its mound, and the citadel fortress will stand on its rightful site. Hallelujah. The word of Yahweh is very clear. When our captivity is ended, we will be reestablished with our gold and our silver. Those who plundered us will be plundered. They will also be taken captive by us and become our servants. These things have not taken place yet. Yahweh's word is very clear, and it will not return to him void. Isaiah 55:10-11. For just as the rain and the snow comes down from heaven, and they do not return except they have watered the earth thoroughly and caused it to bring forth the sprout and give seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word that goes out of my mouth. It shall not return to me without success, but shall accomplish what I desire and be successful in the thing for which I sent it. If he said it out of his mouth, it must come to pass. Our enemies have provided us a quasi-freedom or fake freedom. The reality is we were deceived into a new form of slavery. Today, we will take a look at the deception. Dred Scott versus Sanford, 1857. The Supreme Court opinion written by Chief Justice Taney held that Negro persons of African descent were not citizens of the United States. The court reasoned that at the time of the ratification of the U.S. Constitution, Negro persons of African descent were brought to the U.S. as property, and whether later freed or not, could not become U.S. citizens, even though many states granted citizenship to African Americans. The court separated state citizenship from federal citizenship and found that federal citizenship disqualified African Americans because the court believed the founders meant to exclude them from the original Constitution. Let's read some citations from the court transcripts. A free Negro of the African race whose ancestors were brought to this country and sold as slaves is not a citizen within the meaning of the Constitution of the United States. B. When the Constitution was adopted, they were not regarded in any of the states as members of the community which constitutes the state, and were not numbered among its people or citizens. Consequently, the special rights and immunities guaranteed to citizens do not apply to them. And not being citizens within the meaning of the Constitution, they are not entitled to sue in that character in a court of the United States, and the circuit court has no jurisdiction in such a suit. C. The only two clauses in the Constitution which points to this race treats them as persons whom it was morally lawful to deal in as articles of property and to hold as slaves. D. Since the adoption of the Constitution of the United States, no state can by any subsequent law make a foreigner or any other description of persons citizens of the United States, nor entitle them to the rights and privileges secured to the citizens by that instrument. E. A state, by its laws passed since the adoption of the Constitution, may put a foreigner or any other description of persons upon a footing with its own citizens as to all the rights and privileges enjoined to them within its dominion and by its law, but that will not make him a citizen of the United States, nor entitle him to sue in its courts, nor to any of the privileges and immunities of a citizen in another state. So the Dred Scott ruling stated that even though some states granted us citizenship, we were not citizens of the United States. The court made a distinction between state citizenship and federal citizenship. Please keep this information in the front of your mind as we continue on with this video. There are two kinds of citizenship in this land: federal citizenship and state citizenship. Please understand that this Supreme Court ruling has never been overturned. Lincoln sent out his Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. This was just a proclamation. It did not abolish slavery in the United States, as many of us has been taught. This proclamation only applied to the Confederate States, which were in rebellion to the covenant contract for the Union of the States. Involuntary slavery or forced slavery, except for a crime, was officially abolished in the United States with the passing of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment, Section 1 states, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction." The 13th Amendment was passed by Congress on January 31st, 1865, and ratified on December 6, 1865, when Georgia became the 27th state to ratify it. While the Senate and Congress ratified this amendment to end slavery in the United States, state legislators began immediately to counteract this amendment by passing a series of black codes. The first of the black codes was passed in Mississippi on November 22nd, 1865, just 15 days prior to the December 6th ratification. A wise man by the name of Mel Stamper wrote, "The law is where the true history of a nation is found, not in revisionist history books." While this country attempts to feed a false narrative of freedom to us and our children, the law is undisputable on our true condition. Let's look at some of these black codes or laws established to govern the newly freed men and women. In Mississippi, 1865, an act to confer civil rights on freedmen and for other purposes. Section 3. All freedmen, free Negroes, or mulattoes who do now and have heretofore lived and cohabited together as husband and wife shall be taken and held in law as legally married, and the issue shall be taken and held as legitimate for all purposes, that it shall not be lawful for any freeman, free Negro, or mulatto to intermarry with any white person, nor for any white person to intermarry with any freedman, free Negro, or mulatto, and any person who shall so intermarry shall be deemed guilty of felony, and on conviction thereof shall be confined in a state penitentiary for life. And those shall be deemed freemen, free Negroes, and mulattoes who are of pure Negro blood, and those descended from a Negro to the third generation, inclusive though one ancestor in each generation may have been a white person. In Mississippi, 1865, an act to regulate the relation of master and apprentice as it relates to freedmen, free Negroes, and mulattoes. In the management and control of said apprentice, said master or mistress shall have the power to inflict such moderate corporal chastisement as a father or a guardian is allowed to inflict on his or her child, or award at common law, provided that in no case shall cruel or inhumane punishment be inflicted. In South Carolina, 1865, servants must assist their masters in the defense of their own person, family, premises, or property. Also in South Carolina in 1865, no person of color could become an artisan, mechanic, or shopkeeper unless he obtained a license from the judge of the district court, a license that could cost $100 or more. In St. Landry Parish, Louisiana, 1865, an ordinance relative to the police of Negroes recently emancipated within the parish of St. Landry. Be it further ordained that no Negro shall be permitted to preach, exhort, or otherwise declaim to congregations of colored people without a special permission in writing from the president of the police jury. Any Negro violating the provision of this section shall pay a fine of $10, or in default thereof shall be forced to work 10 days on the public road, or suffer corporal punishment as hereinafter provided. Be it further ordained that no Negro shall be permitted to rent or keep a house within said parish. Any Negro violating this provision shall be immediately ejected and compelled to find an employer. And any person who shall rent or give the use of any house to any Negro in violation of this section shall pay a fine of $5 for each offense. Be it further ordained that it shall be the duty of every citizen to act as a police officer for the detection of offenses and the apprehension of offenders, who shall be immediately handed over to the proper capital of Chief of Patrol. These are just a few of the laws established to govern our newly freed ancestors. These various laws were instituted across the land, beginning in the South. Let's move forward. The 13th Amendment banned slavery and involuntary servitude except for the punishment of a crime. We just covered some of the black codes that were established to place our ancestors back in servitude by the establishment of these frivolous laws which restricted their movement and their freedoms. We also discussed how the Supreme Court ruled that even though some states granted citizenship to Negroes, they were not citizens of the United States. Neither could they become citizens of the United States. It was made clear in this ruling that citizenship of the United States and state citizenship was not one and the same. The 14th Amendment further distinguished that there was two forms of citizenship in this land. The 14th Amendment was passed by Congress June 13th, 1866, and ratified July 9th, 1868. There are 5 sections of this amendment, but for the purposes of this video, we will focus on Section 1. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment reads as follows. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. This amendment made all persons born or naturalized in the United States citizens of the United States and citizens of the states they reside in. It is said that this amendment overturned the Supreme Court ruling, but please note the Dred Scott ruling has never been directly overturned by the Supreme Court, despite Congress passing the 13th and the 14th Amendment, and despite the court's own ruling in the slaughterhouse cases. The Supreme Court ruled on the slaughterhouse cases that a citizen's privileges and immunities as protected by the Constitution's 14th Amendment against the states were limited to those spelled out in the Constitution and did not include many rights given to the individual states. In reality, only the Supreme Court can overturn a Supreme Court ruling. Congress has the ability to pass laws in response to a ruling, but not directly overturn the ruling. As added proof, please see the link to the U.S. government's website on overturned Supreme Court decisions in the description. Please take note, the Dred Scott decision is not listed as an overturned decision. Let's look at a few more lines directly from the transcripts of the Dred Scott versus Sanford case taken directly from the National Archives. Section 1, Item 9. The change in public opinion and feelings in relation to the African race, which has taken place since the adoption of the Constitution, cannot change its construction and meaning, and it must be constructed and administered now according to its true meaning and intention when it was formed and adopted. Section 3, Items 2 through 4. The clause in the Constitution authorizing Congress to make all needful rules and regulations for the government of the territory and other property of the United States applies only to territory within the chartered limits of some one of the states when they were colonies of Great Britain, and which was surrendered by the British government to the old Confederation of the States in the Treaty of Peace. It does not apply to territory acquired by the present federal government by treaty or conquest from a foreign nation. The case of the American and Ocean Insurance Company versus Cantor referred to and examined, showing that the decision in this case is not in conflict with that opinion, and that the court did not, in the case referred, decide upon the construction of the clause of the Constitution above mentioned because the case before them did not make it necessary to decide the question. Number 3, the United States, under the present Constitution, cannot acquire territory to be held as a colony to be governed as it will and pleasure, but it may acquire territory which at the time has not a population that fits it to become a state, and still govern it as a territory until it has a population which, in the judgment of Congress, entitles it to be admitted as a state of the Union. Number 4, during the time it remains a territory, Congress may legislate over it within the scope of its constitutional powers in relation to citizens of the United States, and may establish a territorial government, and the form of this local government must be regulated by the discretion of Congress, but with power not exceeding those which Congress itself by the Constitution is authorized to exercise over citizens of the United States in respect to their rights of person and rights of property. Section 4, Items 1 to 5. The territory thus acquired is acquired by the people of the United States for their common and equal benefit through their agent and trustee, the federal government. Remember, the federal government is an agent and trustee of the people. Congress can exercise no power over the rights of a person or property of a citizen in the territory which is prohibited by the Constitution. The government and the citizen, whenever the territory is open to settlement, both enter it with their respective rights defined and limited by the Constitution. Number 2, Congress have no right to prohibit the citizens of any particular state or states from taking up their home there, while it permits citizens of other states to do so, nor has it a right to give privileges to one class of citizens which it refuses to another. The territory is acquired for their equal and common benefit, and if open to any, it must be open to all upon equal and the same terms. Number 3, every citizen has a right to take with him into the territory any article of property which the Constitution of the United States recognizes as property. Number 4, the Constitution of the United States recognizes slaves as property and pledges the federal government to protect it. And the Constitution cannot exercise any more authority over property of that description than it may constitutionally exercise over property of any other kind. Number 5, the act of Congress, therefore, prohibiting a citizen of the United States from taking with him his slaves when he removes to the territory in question to reside, is an exercise of authority over private property which is not warranted by the Constitution, and the removal of the plaintiff by his owner to the territory gave him no title to freedom. Lastly, Section 5, Items 1 and 2. The plaintiff himself acquired no title to freedom by being taken by his owner to Rock Island in Illinois and brought back to Missouri. This court has heretofore decided that the status or condition of a person of African descent depends on the laws of the state in which he resides. Number 2, it has been settled by the decision of the highest court in Missouri that by the laws of that state, a slave does not become entitled to his freedom where the owner takes him to reside in a state where slavery is not permitted, and afterwards brought him back to Missouri. Conclusion: it follows that it is apparent upon the record that the court below erred in its judgment on the plea in abatement and erred in giving judgment for the defendant when the exception shows that the plaintiff was not a citizen of the United States. And as the circuit court had no jurisdiction either in the case stated in the plea of abatement or in the one stated in the exception, its judgment in favor of the defendant is erroneous and must be reversed. As much as we may disagree with this ruling, Section 1, Item 9 is very clear. The change in public opinion and feeling in relation to the African race, which has taken place since the adoption of the Constitution, cannot change its construction and meaning. It must be constructed and administered now according to its true meaning and intention when it was formed and adopted. Just as Torah law, the Constitution for the land of Israel, does not and did not take in account your feelings or the stranger's feelings pertaining to the laws one might disagree with. Neither did this law take in account our feelings, nor feelings others may have had or grew to have after the adoption of the Constitution. The Dred Scott ruling, no matter what our feelings may be, was just according to the Constitution they created at the time it was framed. We were not citizens then, neither were we ever meant to be citizens of the United States. So how were we made citizens of the United States when the Supreme Court decision on Dred Scott versus Sanford clearly laid out why we weren't citizens and why we were never meant to be? As I stated previously, Congress has the ability to pass laws in response to rulings, but not directly overturn the ruling. The passing of the 14th Amendment made us citizens of the United States and citizens of the states we were born in. That all seems pretty simple. Case closed, right? Not exactly. Chief Justice Taney made it clear in his opinion to the court that we were not a part of those classified as people or persons to the Constitution. It is true, every person and every class and description of persons who were at the time of the adoption of the Constitution recognized as citizens in the several states became also citizens of their new political body, but none other. It was formed by them and for them and their posterity, but for no one else. And the personal rights and privileges guaranteed to citizens of this new sovereignty were intended to embrace those who were then members of the several state communities, or who should afterwards by birthright or otherwise become members according to the provisions of the Constitution and the privileges on which it was founded. It was the union of those who were at the time members of distinct and separate political communities into one political family, whose power for certain specific purposes was to extend over the whole territory of the United States. And it gave to each citizen rights and privileges outside of his state which he did not before possess, and placed him in every other state upon a perfect equality with its own citizens as to rights of persons and rights of property. It made him a citizen of the United States. In the opinion of the court, the legislation and histories of the times and the language used in the Declaration of Independence show that neither the class of persons who had been imported as slaves, nor their descendants, whether they became free or not, were acknowledged as part of the people or intended to be included in the general words used in that memorable instrument. If we, the people, did not initially include us, how could it suddenly include us with the passing of the 14th Amendment? The 14th Amendment made us and everyone else born on this soil persons. Prior to that, we were property. All persons born here or naturalized were made citizens of the United States and the states they reside in. We went from property to dual citizenship by birth. Weren't many of our ancestors born here prior to the passing of the 14th Amendment? Didn't the court rule we weren't included in the people when the Constitution was established? How do we know that we are suddenly included in the 14th Amendment when there is no special language that specifically says that? How could we suddenly go from property to persons by the stroke of a pen? You mean to tell me for 249 years we were considered property, and suddenly a decree is passed and overnight we are legally made into persons by this country? Persons that are due all the rights and privileges of all other citizens of the United States, especially when the mindset of the people on the very day it was passed was, and I quote, "They have no rights which the white man were bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. He was bought and sold and treated as an ordinary article of merchandise and trafficked whenever a profit could be made by it." If you believe that the passing of this amendment made us do all the rights and privileges of all other citizens, why did we have to fight for civil rights? Why are we still complaining about biased treatment by this government? Why has every class of people surpassed us in obtaining their rights, including the debased group known as the LGBT? Does that make you wonder what is a legal person and a citizen in the eyes of the law? Webster's Dictionary lists a legal person as a body of persons or an entity, as a corporation, considered as having many of the rights and responsibilities of a natural person, especially the capacity to sue and be sued. Cornell Law School Wex Dictionary lists legal person as legal person refers to a human or non-human entity that is treated as a person for limited legal purposes. Typically, a legal person can sue and be sued, own property, and enter into contracts. Black's Law Dictionary, the 7th edition, defines legal person as an entity such as a corporation created by law and given certain legal rights and duties of a human being, a being, real or imaginary, who for the purpose of legal reasoning is treated more or less as a human being. In law, a person can be a human or a natural person. A person can also be non-human, fictitious entity such as a corporation. The question at hand is, did the 14th Amendment make us legally a human, natural person or a non-human entity in the eyes of this government? Now we are tasked with figuring out which definition we fall under. At first glance, and logically speaking, it should be easy if we look up the definition of a citizen. According to Cornell Law's Wex Dictionary, a citizen is a person who, by place of birth, nationality of one or both parents, or naturalization, is granted full rights and responsibilities as a member of a nation or political community. Black's Law Dictionary, the 7th edition, says, a member of a free city or jural society, possessing all the rights and privileges which can be enjoyed by any person under its constitution and government, and subject to the corresponding duties. Reading these legal definitions, one would logically say, okay, this means a human or a natural man. Corporations aren't citizens according to this definition, so it has to be referring to a natural man, and stop there. The word of Yahweh response to this is Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from acting as priest for me. And since you have forgotten the law of your Elohim, I will also forget your children. We cannot stop there. We need to get to the bottom of this so we can understand without a shadow of a doubt our current status in this land. Does this country recognize us as natural men and women, humans, or as juridical persons, also known as corporations or fictitious entities? We know that a corporation can be classified as a person. We need to figure out, can a corporation be a citizen of the United States? We will use their law to try to figure this out. Remember, the law is where the true history of a nation is found, not in revisionist history books. Just as we would go to the testimonies written in the Book of Remembrance to understand Torah law, let the precedent set in their courts of laws be their own guides or examples of facts pertaining to their laws. The United States Code is the codification by subject matter of the general and permanent laws of the United States. Title 28, U.S.C. 3002, Section 15A states, the United States is a federal corporation, not a government. What is the legal definition of a corporation? Corporations are entities that act as a single, fictional person. Much like an actual person, a corporation may sue, be sued, lend, and borrow. A U.S. citizen is a citizen of this federal corporation. If the United States is a federal corporation, a fictitious entity, then all of its citizens are citizens of a federal corporation. All fictitious entities. Title 46, U.S. Code 50501 deems entities citizens of the United States. Corporations are listed as those deemed citizens. To further prove that corporations are indeed citizens of the United States and not humans, let's look at the word expatriate. Expatriate. The term expatriate means A, any United States citizen who relinquishes his citizenship. B, any long-term resident of the United States who ceases to be a lawful permanent resident of the United States within the meaning of Section 7701, Section B6 of Title 26 of the U.S. Code. Right on the IRS website, irs.gov, for taxpayer purposes, these are all classifications of persons. The term United States persons means a citizen, a resident of the United States, you and I, if we are calling ourselves citizens, a domestic partner, married persons, a domestic corporation, companies that are incorporated and run business in the country. Examples are McDonald's or Walmart. Any estate other than a foreign estate. Any trust if a court within the United States is able to exercise primary supervision over the administration of the trust, and one or more United States persons have the authority to control all substantial decisions of the trust. Any other person that is not a foreign person. If expatriate means to relinquish your citizenship, and only natural men and women are citizens, why are businesses like Accenture, Ingersoll Rand plc, White Mountain Insurance Group, and Argo Group International Holdings Ltd, all companies traded on the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, identified as U.S. corporations who have expatriated offshore? We were made in legis, a creature of law or an artificial being, fictitious entities with the passing of the 14th Amendment according to their own congressional records. Not just us, but all citizens of the United States. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as a co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the PCT, Public Charitable Trust, the Constructive Cestacate Trust of U.S. Inc., under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. Congressional Record dated June 13, 1967, page 15641-15646. Instead of granting us freedom, the powers that be craftily found a way to enslave the whole country. We are indeed destroyed for lack of knowledge, and most of us reject knowledge altogether when it is presented to us. I admit I was one of those people. Praise Yahweh, the Elohim of my forefathers, for eyes to see. I pray that these words today do not fall on deaf ears. Many of us quote the Torah and say we are the children of Israel, as though it is a trendy new religious group. When things don't go the way we expect, or the way these religious teachers have taught, most abandon the way as if it was all make-believe, or a new sect started from a fairy tale book that the so-called white man gave us. Yahweh is loyal and gracious to all those who fear him and depart from evil. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 9:9-10. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase learning. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the holy is understanding. Yahweh is making me a living witness that he is Elohim, and there is no other Elohim but him. Also, these words are true and life to all those who find them. Isaiah 43:10. Ye are my witnesses, saith Yahweh, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no Elohim formed, neither shall there be after me. Proverbs 4:20-22. My child, be attentive to my words. To my sayings incline your ear. May they not escape from your sight. Keep them in the midst of your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing to the entire body. Hallelujah. Before the death of Moses, he declared this to our forefathers. Deuteronomy 30:15-20. See, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil, in that I command thee this day to love Yahweh thy Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply. And Yahweh thy Elohim shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thy heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other elves, and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that ye shall surely perish, and that ye shall not prolong your days upon the land whither thou passest over Jordan to go to possess it. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live, that thou mayest love Yahweh thy Elohim, and thou mayest obey his voice, and that thou mayest cleave unto him, for he is thy life and the length of thy days, that thou mayest dwell in the land which Yahweh sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. Heaven and earth was called to record the choice. The choice our fathers were given were life and blessings, or death and cursing. Not both. It was one or the other. According to what is written, our fathers chose death and entered into a covenant with it. Isaiah 28:14-18. Therefore hear the word of Yahweh, men of mockery, rulers of these people in Jerusalem. Because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and we have made an agreement with hell. The overwhelming flood, when it passes through, will not come to us, for we have made lies our refuge, and we have hidden ourselves in falsehood. Therefore Yahweh Elohim says this, look, I am laying a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone, a founded foundation. The one who trusts will not panic, and I will make justice the measuring line, and righteousness the plumb line, and hell will sweep away the refuge of lies, and waters will flood over the hiding place. And your covenant with death will be annulled, and your agreement with hell will not stand. You will become a trampling place for the overwhelming flood when it passes through. Yahweh has not annulled our covenant with death yet. Therefore, Israel is dead, the whole house, due to the agreement our fathers made with death. Heaven and earth were witnesses to the choices that they were given and made. Yahweh told Ezekiel the whole house was dead. Ezekiel 37, 1-14. The hand of Yahweh was upon me, and he brought me by the Spirit of Yahweh, and he let me rest in the midst of the valley, and it was full of bones. And he led me all around over them, and look, very many on the surface of the valley, and look, very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I said, Yahweh Elohim, you know. And he said to me, prophesy to these bones, and you must say to them, to the dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim to these bones, look, I am bringing into you breath, and you will live, and I will lay on you sinew, and I will let flesh come upon you, and I will cover you over with skin, and I will put breath into you, and you will live, and you will know that I am Yahweh. And I prophesied just as I had been commanded, and there was a sound at my prophesying, and look, a rattling, and they came together, the bones, bone to its bone. And I look, and indeed sinew were on them, and flesh went up, and skin covered over them upward, but breath was not in them. And he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, son of man, and you must say to the breath, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, from the four winds, come, O Spirit, and breathe on these dead ones, so that they may live. And I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they came alive, and they stood on their feet, a very, very large group. And he said to me, Son of man, these bones are all of the house of Israel. Look, they are saying, our bones are dried up, and our hope is destroyed. We are cut off as far as we are concerned. Therefore prophesy, and you must say to them, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, look, I am opening your graves, and I will bring you up from your graves, my people, and I will bring you to the land of Israel. And you will know that I am Yahweh when I open your graves, when I bring you up from your graves, my people, and I will put my breath in you that you may live, and I will cause you to rest on your own soil, and you will know that I, Yahweh, I have spoken it, and I will act, declares Yahweh. Hallelujah. Yahweh said, those dead bones were the whole house of Israel. We know that it wasn't a physical death of the whole house of Israel. Otherwise, how could we logically claim to be Israel if the whole clan was literally dead? If we are not physically or literally dead, then we must be Civiliter Mortuus, or civilly dead. According to their own congressional records, U.S. citizens are civilly dead. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity, operating as a co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the PCT, Public Charitable Trust, the Constructive Sesticate Trust of U.S. Inc., under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. Congressional Record, dated June 13th, 1967. It can be found on pages 15641 through 15646. Could that be the reason we had to protest for civil rights? To this day, we are complaining about not being equally treated or humanely treated. Every nation or group of people is put ahead of you when it comes to your rights and equality. Does a dead man have rights? Can dead men and women receive reparations? Ecclesiastes 9:4-6. Whoever is joined to all the living has hope. After all, even a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead do not know anything. They no longer have a reward, and even the memory of them is forgotten. What they loved and hated, as well as what they desire, has already perished. They no longer have any share in what is done under the sun. Have mercy. There is no reward nor memory of the dead. Didn't Yahweh tell us our enemies were craftily plotting to make the name of Israel be remembered no more? Psalms 83, 2-4. For look, your enemies roar, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They devise cunning schemes against your people and consult together against your protected ones. They say, come, let us annihilate them from being a nation, so that the name of Israel will be remembered no more. We have called ourselves everything but Israel. Today we are calling ourselves Black or African American. Black and African American has no standing before law. There is no definition in the law books listed for black. It doesn't exist. If black doesn't exist and has no standing before law, what human rights are we entitled to under the law? Which leads us back to the original Dred Scott ruling. We have no rights which the white man was bound to respect. If we have no rights that they are bound to respect, and they prove that every chance they get, what makes you think the talk of reparations are anything more than gaslighting? This is not just in this country. This is in all countries controlled by your enemies. For Yahweh made it clear that the nations have consulted together with a unified purpose. The United Nations are evidence of that unification. They have a Declaration of Human Rights. However, they have never stepped in to call this de facto government to the carpet for the crimes against you. Article 15, Item 1 and 2 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. 1. Everyone has a right to a nationality. 2. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor denied the right to change his nationality. What is nationality? In law, membership in a nation or sovereign state. It is to be distinguished or separated from citizenship, a somewhat narrower term that is sometimes used to denote the status of those nationals who have full political privileges. Under international law, nationality defines the legal relationship or legal bond between the citizen, national, and her state based on social facts of attachment, and which give rise to the rights and duties on the part of both sides of the relationship. This statement was taken from Nationality and Statelessness under International Law by Alice Edwards. What nation do we belong to? It has been determined by their own law that the United States is not a nation. It is a corporation. African American is not a nation. It is a byword used to classify the stateless nation of slaves. Article 16, Item 3 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. We know that our families receive no protection by this society nor the Union of Nations. They established the UN in 1945. Where were they when the states, which are nations, were instituting the man in the house rule or the substitute father rule? Aid to families with dependent children was created from the Social Security Act of 1935. In an effort to destroy our families, many states who received federal funding created their own man in the house rules. Children who qualified for the programs were denied those benefits if the children's mother were living or having relations with any single or married able-bodied man. It didn't matter if the man was the child's father or not. Many of you blamed the mothers for complying when she was faced with a situation of survival for her and her children. In 1968, 4 children of a mother who was denied benefits brought a class action suit against the state of Alabama that reached as far as the Supreme Court. King versus Smith. By their own regulators' court testimony, the rule applied only if the parties had sex at least once a week. Another official testified that sex every 3 months was sufficient, and still another placed the frequency at once every 6 months. So by their own sworn admission, if they found out a woman had sex in the past 6 months, she was not eligible for help. At the same time, this country was discriminated against her and the man when it came to gainful employment. So what was her alternative? Sounds real narcissistic on behalf of the state to control the lives of the so-called free men and women. There is no safe haven for the nation outside the land of promise. We are walking dead men and women. These nations and this corporation are enemies of the nation. This is why we can be murdered at will and no one faces the consequences but us. There is no justice for us. We are already dead in their eyes. I gave you their laws and their precedents. You can research them for yourselves. We are legally dead to this nation. And Israel has an issue waiting on Yah, as if we have power to do anything. Yah has declared, whoever wanders out of the way of understanding will remain in the congregation of the dead. Proverbs 21, verses 16. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Psalms 143. O Yahweh, hear my prayer. Listen to my supplications. In your faithfulness answer me, and in your righteousness. And do not enter into judgment with your servant, because no one alive is righteous before you. For the enemy has pursued my soul. He has crushed my life to the ground. He has made me dwell in dark places like those long dead. And so my spirit grows faint within me. My heart within me is desolate. I remember the days of long ago. I meditate on all your doings. I muse on the labor of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you, and my soul longs for you like a dry land. Selah. Quickly answer me, O Yahweh. My spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me, or I will become like those descending to the pit. Cause me to hear your loyal love in the morning, for I trust you. Cause me to know the way that I should go, for I lift up my soul to you. Deliver me from my enemies, O Yahweh. I take refuge in you. Teach me to do your will, for you are my Elohim. Your spirit is good. Lead me on to level ground for your name's sake. O Yahweh, preserve my life. In your righteousness, bring me out of trouble. And in your loyal love, destroy my enemies and exterminate all the adversaries of my soul. For I am your servant. Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom. And I hope you will join me for the next video.